Today I will try to complete my introduction of civilizational perspective to culture by making you aware with another set of references and another set of scholars who devoted their lifetime in elucidating the tried and trusted techniques and methods of studying culture from civilizational perspective as a nominal reality. These texts and these authors are usually not discussed in modern Indian universities, although they are discussed, analyzed, and contextualized by European scholars primarily to understand European culture, but also as a source of alternative, ecologically sustainable, ethically just, and democratically empowering discourse on future civilizations at the ruin of modern and post-modern cultures. The intensity of such scholarship has increased after the creation, dissemination, and distribution of coronavirus from 24th December 2019. According to scholars, relying on my references today, the coronavirus was created on 24th December 2019 in a town called Wuhan in China. Now please try to underline. I am not saying the communist state of China created it to destroy the non-Chinese economies and scientific establishment. Nor I am saying that the technology is Chinese. I am only referring to the process of creation of coronavirus. Now, who created it? The answer is nature created it. Which nature? Not the phenomenal nature of Kant and Max Weber and Talcott Parsons, but the nominal nature. Had created it with the help of evil forces in United States and China. As you know, the human fetus is created by the sperm of the father and the ovum of the mother. But technologically, it is possible to find a surrogate mother. It does not mean that the surrogate mother created the child. Therefore, the Chinese lab in Wuhan acted as the surrogate mother, as the technical womb where corona was created by a particular conjunction of planets in our solar system and a particular temperature available as a necessary condition in the galaxy. But it could not have become pandemic had there been no human collaboration by technically superior evils in the United States of America and China. Now, it was long predicted that at the end of 2019 or the beginning of 2020, in the Gregorian calendar followed the world over today under the influence of Pope Gregory of Vatican City. The first scholar who is relied in the study of phenomena, particularly in Germany, but also in the scientific laboratory at CERN in Scandinavia, are are the analysis of non-religious और लौकिक और अपरा विद्या लिटरेचर। For example, are Vedas religious texts? The answer is no. They are not religious texts in the modern sense of sociology and other social sciences. Rather, they are texts which try to describe and decode nominal reality of the cosmos. So are the complementary literature of the Tantras. In the Vedic literature, we have mantras. What is mantra? Mantra is a systematic theory of energy. This energy is primarily produced by 5 Mahabhutas or 5 primordial elements. Let me first describe these elements and then I will come to the references. The 5 Mahabhutas or the 5 elements of nominal reality are Shiti. I will translate in English also. Shiti, Jal, Pavak, Gagan, Samir. In the Vedic rhyme you understand? Musical reading of the alphabets. It is called Chiti, Jal, Pavak, Gagan, Samira. Now, what is Samir from last? Air. Samir is air. Gagan, sky, Akash. Pavak, fire or Agni. Jal, water. Shiti, Prithvi, earth. These are called Mahabhutas, the great primordial elements which are the building blocks of nominal reality of cosmos. Then we have two concepts. these five Mahabhutas create Brahmand or macrocosm. And these five Mahabhutas also create Pinda or microcosm. Now, what is the example of microcosm? There can be many examples, but one very significant example for this class can be the sacred institution of kinship called marriage in English. But in Sanskrit, the term marriage had two connotations. One is called Vivaha, and it is very popular. Almost every Indian today, due to intermixing of local cultures as well as due to the availability of very sophisticated modes of travel and communication, they have heard the term Vivah. And there are reasonably good sociological texts about Vivah in India. But the English term marriage in the traditional European context of pre-Christian Rome and Greece had another Sanskrit connotation, and it was called Udvah. Vivah and Udvah. Now, in the post-modern condition, a historical period after 1968, students revolt in University of Paris, as well as defeat of United States of America in Vietnam. Was snatched as golden opportunity to dismantle European Enlightenment of 18th century. The man who snatched this opportunity for creating this powerful movement of post-modern condition is hardly named in social science literature. In the writings of Michel Foucault, for example, or Lyotard, or Derrida, or Barthes, you come across to a giant, intellectual giant from Europe, namely Friedrich Nietzsche. But he was already dead. In the year 1900 AD. Although some of his books were published posthumously, that is after his death, by his disciples and sympathizers. But until he was dead, Friedrich Nietzsche was a marginal figure in European thought. He had criticized the ontology, that is, theory of knowledge, ontology, that is theory of reality, epistemology or the theory of knowledge, aesthetics or the theory of beauty and happiness, and judgment, his theory of judgment. These together constituted the Kantian paradigm, which for people like Max Weber and many others was at par for the social sciences, with Copernican revolution or Copernican revolution in natural sciences. In other words, people like Max Weber established Immanuel Kant at such a higher pedestal, which was not given even to great scientists like Isaac Newton. Rather, it was reserved for only Copernicus. But this man, Friedrich Nietzsche, who was a single, and who had a very fragile health, challenged the scientific establishment and intellectual orthodoxy through his writing. But he was attacked from multiple corners. And his mind and body could not sustain this systematic attack by the power elite. And he had to go to mental asylum. Now it is an interesting fact that if you take a list of 200 illustrious names of the modern world in science, philosophy or humanities, social sciences, medicine, art, aesthetics, politics, economics and religion, then you will be surprised to find one similarity. Almost 99% of them will be a follower of Immanuel Kant. This is first similarity. And the second similarity is that almost 99.9% of them had visited at least 5 times to mental asylums. Now, Friedrich Nietzsche was not a follower of Immanuel Kant, but he was living in the same modern condition created by the intellectual paradigm of Immanuel Kant. Therefore, even he had to visit the mental asylum many times during his life. This phenomena of Nietzsche going to asylum and 99.9% of European modern intellectuals going to asylum became a very important source of Michel Foucault's scientific gaze. What is gaze? It is not look. It is not looking. For example, there is a beautiful girl and she is, walking on the ramp, fashion ramp, or on the road, or in a mall. You will see that most people do not look at her, rather they gaze at her. Gaze means gurna. You understand the difference between प्यार से देखना and घूरना? Michel Foucault had a gaze over madness, punishment, asylum, jail, where criminals are put in, mental asylums, where mad people are put in. Or birth of the clinic. In clinic, modern clinic and hospital also, doctors gaze at the patients. How doctors gauge at the patient? Through pathological labs. You go to a modern doctor, he or she is so busy, he or she is in such a hurry that he or she will hardly give you more than 10 to 15 seconds. He or she will not listen your story of your illness. They will put you to the gate of pathological laboratories. And in pathological laboratories you are treated in the same way in which animals are put in the slaughterhouse. I know many of you may be non-vegetarian, but I challenge all of you, not only 4 or 5 of you, but all of you of your generation. In case you see how your non-vegetarian food is cut to pieces from the live body of the animal or the bird or the sea food. You relish the cooked food in the restaurant or your kitchen. But 99% of you will faint when you see animals or birds, live animals and live birds being cut for your consumption in your kitchen. Therefore, in the writings of Michel Foucault, the most popular among the postmodernists, post-structuralists, what are the key terms? Friedrich Nietzsche, gaze, madness and civilization. Madness and Civilization was his first book. Then he wrote Archaeology of Knowledge. Then he wrote Order of the Things. Then he wrote Birth of the Clinic. Then he wrote 3 volumes of History of Sexuality. There is a publishing industry, and the publisher invests money and it tries to get maximum profit. Therefore authors are suggested to give interesting titles to their book. Had I written the same sentences and the same words in 3 volumes, unlike Michel Foucault, I would not have titled it as History of Sexuality. Rather, I would have titled it as History of European Culture. But then it would not have been sold in large amount. Now, in case I have to summarize Michel Foucault, I will say that according to Michel Foucault, any culture gives primary importance to the biology and psychology of sexual relationships and sexual urge. Therefore, there is a book by Bronislaw Malinowski. It is titled Sex and Repression in Tribal Societies. Therefore, there is a book by Sigmund Freud entitled Civilization and its Discontent. And the underlying theory is that 90% of incurable diseases of modern world, 90% diseases of 90% incurable diseases of modern world are rooted in suppressed, repressed or distorted sexuality of a person. Suppressed, repressed, distorted or made sublime of the sexual urge called libido, Libido. In the writings of Sigmund Freud, sexual urge or libido occupied the same place in Sigmund Freud which urge to exploit others occupied in the writings of Freud, in the writings of Thomas Hobbes and his followers, including Karl Marx. But in Karl Marx, it is much more complicated, much more complex. In the writings of Thomas Hobbes and the classical political economists like Adam Smith, David Hume, Ricardo, Marshall, Keynes, etc. The urge to make money, the urge to gratify sexual need, the urge to gratify hunger, the urge to control others around us is the primary motive of man. This stems from the theory of Thomas Hobbes I discussed in greater detail in first semester when I was dealing with nature of man and society in Marx, Weber and Durkheim. Now, the basic difference between Sigmund Freud and Bronislaw Malinowski is the following. According to Sigmund Freud, there is a sexual attraction in the family of near relatives. And he classified it into two complementary complexes. The first is called Oedipus complex and the second is called Electra complex. The Oedipus complex is a sexual attraction of a son for the mother. And Electra complex is the sexual attraction of the daughter for the father. Sigmund Freud calls it natural. Now Freud said, in case Electra complex and Oedipus complex is allowed to grow at the natural pace, no civilization is possible, no culture is possible. Therefore, the institution of incest taboo is developed or canonized or established. What is incest taboo? A kinship rule to not marry within the family of procreation. The father had no right to marry his own daughter. The son had no right to marry his own mother. And by extension, the brother had no right to marry his own sister. According to Sigmund Freud, voluntary withdrawal, voluntary renunciation to marry within the blood group is the beginning of culture. And he said, according to Sigmund Freud, this is universal. Incest taboo is universal. It is the foundation of each and every culture found on earth. According to Sigmund Freud, sexuality is biological. It is rooted in biology. And the real problem of culture is to suppress or sublime this sexuality in such a way that people marry outside their family and kinship. Now the term family in Indian civilization is known as parivar in North India. But there are other terms which have the same cultural connotation. For example, there is a caste called Nayar in the southern state of Kerala. Among the Nayars of Kerala, the term family is equivalent to the institution of Tarawal. And there is an anthropologist, female anthropologist, who had studied this Nayar kinship. Nayars are matrilineal kinship groups of Kerala, who were studied by anthropologist Kathleen Goff by following ethnographic method of Bronislaw Malinowski. Now, what is the view of Malinowski? He said Freud is overgeneralizing. Freud is overgeneralizing his own Jewish experience. The Jews live in kibbutz, which is like the tribal institution of youth dormitory known among some tribes as gotuls or gotuls. Primarily it was found in very developed, sophisticated form among the tribes of Bastar in contemporary Chhattisgarh. And the person who studied them was a Christian missionary anthropologist whose name was Verrier Elwin. In the same way, there was another disciple of Bronislaw Malinowski. Her name was Ruth Benedict. She wrote a book called Patterns of Culture. Malinowski and his disciples believed that sexual drive or sexual experience is primarily a cultural phenomena. And it had nothing to do with biology or universality. I brought in these concepts and these theories to underline the Indian concept of Vivah and Udvah. According to earlier Indian sociologists like G.S. Buriye, K.M. Kapadia, Iravati Karve, P.H. Prabhu, and Indologist Raj Bali Pandey. There are 8 types of traditional vivah, 8 types of marriages known as vivah. But none of them discuss the institution of Udvah. The primary social function of marriage as vivah is procreation of children, so that there are enough people to inherit the cultural tradition of the moral community. And therefore, they said Hindu marriage is a sacrament, a religious sacrament. It is not a social or legal contract like the nikah of Muslims. or civil marriage of the Protestant Christians. But what is Udva and what is its sociological function? Udva is a sacred relationship between a man and a woman where physical relationship or sexual relationship is neither necessary nor sufficient. The primary function of Udva is the upliftment of the married partners physically, mentally, emotionally and spiritually. In the terminology of your generation, Udva is an Indian traditional institution which can be easily equated, structurally speaking, with the modern fashion of living together without marriage. Therefore, this is the ninth type of marriage which has been popular in India. In case you asked me the example, celebrated example of Udva from modern India, I can easily give three celebrated examples. The marriage of Swami Ramakrishna Paramhans with Sarada Devi. Who was Ramakrishna Paramhans? He was the guru of many people, including Swami Vivekananda. Ramakrishna and Sarada Devi were husband and wife, but there was no physical relationship between them. It is, such a well-documented fact that there is no possibility of doubting it. Thousands of devotees have meticulously written about the life of Ramakrishna and the life of Sarada Devi. They never lived in a closed room, They lived in a bedroom, but there was no door. Doorless room. The second marriage, which definitely comes within this category of Udva, was the relationship of Sri Aurobindo of Pondicherry with his French companion, known to us Indians as Sri Ma or the Holy Mother. Sri Aurobindo and the Holy Mother. But in case you read biography, you know that she was a French woman who was married many times, divorced many times. Of course, she was beautiful, and she did not only marry many times, she had also adulterous relationship. She was a flirt. But when she came and settled at Pondicherry ashram of Sri Aurobindo, they lived like the Udva partner, and it is also well documented by their French and Indian disciples who lived with them in the same ashram. The third celebrated example is also widely reported and widely written about. It was the relationship between Jayaprakash Narayan, who is known as JP, not of Andhra Pradesh but of Patna, Bihar, who was the leader of Jayaprakash movement of 1974. He was a Marxist when he was a student in the United States of America. And when he came to India, he joined Indian National Congress and participated in the Indian freedom struggle. Now, Gandhi was not a Marxist, rather he hated Marxists. Therefore, I do not know why he did this with Jayaprakash Narayan, who was a modern youth, sufficiently influenced by Freud and Marx. When he was in United States, he loved sex without marriage. But Gandhi had a plan for Jayaprakash Narayan. He had a disciple, and his disciple had a beautiful daughter. Her name was Prabhavati. Gandhi gave Prabhavati Diksha of Brahmacharya or celibacy. What is celibacy or Brahmacharya? Voluntary renouncement of sexual relationship and sexual discussion. This is the step one. And he made it sure that she does yoga regularly, religiously, and through yogic exercises and postures and dhyana and mudra, she is able to control her sexuality up to 100%. I am not making my critique or criticism at this moment. I will make it a little later. Now step 2. Now Gandhi is sure that Prabhavati has taken the vow of celibacy, vow, pratigya, and she has practiced sufficient yoga, and she has full control over her mind, body and heart. Roughly, I am not sure, therefore I am giving you approximate. Roughly for 4-5 years, Gandhi had a gauge over the practice of yoga of Prabhavati. And once he was sure, come what, she will not surrender her body and sexuality to her husband. He took a step 2. He arranged the marriage by brainwashing Jayaprakash Narayan with Prabhavati, that she is such a beautiful, such talented, such artistic, such creative woman, that in case you miss her, your life will be like hell. Marry her. And poor JP married to a woman who had taken vow of celibacy. There was no physical relationship between them. Prabhavati was 100% normal woman, and she did all her work normally. But JP was very, very sexually frustrated. And he hated Gandhi like anything. That Gandhi has ruined my life. As a result, after Gandhi died, he made an alliance with Jawaharlal Nehru. And both of them decided to kill the ideology of Gandhi in the Indian National Congress and in the government of Jawaharlal Nehru. But they were defeated again and again by the devout followers of Mahatma Gandhi, led by Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, C. Rajgopalachari. Until his death, Vallabhbhai Patel. And of course, the spiritual successor of Mahatma Gandhi, chosen in 1930s as the first Satyagrahi, when he went on Namak Satyagraha. Have you heard about Namak Satyagraha? From Sabarmati to jail. The first Satyagrahi was the chosen Vinoba Bhave, and he was also a brahmachari. He was not married. Gandhi was a married man, but he never allowed marriage of his two disciples. Jawaharlal Nehru was a married person, but his wife died much earlier and he was a great flirt. And there are many biographies of Jawaharlal Nehru, you can read about it. But Vinoba was a, very pure soul. They made sure that Gandhi was alive even after his death. What Vinoba did, or what Gandhi did, they got independence of India, but the British partitioned India and then made Pakistan on 14th August and Hindustan or India on 15th August. Then Indira Gandhi divided Pakistan into Pakistan and Bangladesh. Now, Muhammad Ali Jinnah became the Governor General of Pakistan. But Gandhi did not accept the offer to become the Governor General of India. Rather, he requested Lord Mountbatten to continue as the Governor General of India even after independence. Now, as you know, India became independent on 15th August 1947 and Gandhi was killed on the 30th January 1948. Jawaharlal Nehru was never a devout follower of Mahatma Gandhi, and his allies Jayaprakash Narayan, Ram Manohar Lohia and others, they were influenced by Marxism. Therefore, Indian state became slowly but steadily an anti-Gandhian. But Gandhi and his followers were able to influence the Indian society, the Indian market, and the Indian military through very intricate cultural networks. Now, what is the foundation of networks in Indic civilization? Kutumba. Kutumba is Sanskrit, Natedari is Hindi, and kinship is English. Are you getting the point? Therefore, Gandhi remained as a moral authority. even after death. In Indian society, but the Indian state, step by step, discarded his policies. This is called unity and diversity in India. At the civilizational level, India is united, but at political, economic, social, linguistic and geographical level, India is a very, very diverse country. Therefore, the defining feature of Indic civilization is not one language, one state and one religion, which is the criteria of modern nation states or modern civilization from roughly 15th century to 20th century. In other words, Indian civilization is built upon natural and cultural and geographical and environmental and economic and political and educational diversity. What sustains India then? What sustains India then? This theme has been developed by Anand Kentish Kumaraswamy in his book Figures of Speech and Figures of Thought. This is also included in the Essential Anand Kentish Kumaraswamy or the collected essays of Anand Kentish Kumaraswamy. And it was elaborated by Radha Kamal Mukherjee and others. We will take this up in the next class on Wednesday. Thank you.